Hello again and welcome back to Heart of the Matter. I'm your host, Stephen Chia. Now, recently someone posted online about a locksmith who took less than 5 minutes to fix a lock and he charged $200 for it. The quip went something like this. You are not paying me for 5 minutes of service, but for 25 years of developing the skill. Well, that's the subject we're unpacking today, the value of a job and the price tag we put on it. It was recently reported that a university graduate starts on a salary that's double that of an ITE grad. In 2021, the median salary for new graduates was $3,800. For polygrads, it was $2,400, and for ITE grads, $1,800. Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong came out to say that something needs to change.
Every industry must relook its skills ladder and invest in ways to attract, retain, and reward their workers. This is not just about reshaping the labor market. It's also about shifting our perception towards work and embracing a broader definition of what counts as good jobs. For us to recognize skills and competencies rather than be overly focused on paper qualifications.
So are we placing too much emphasis on head work and less on heart or hand work? Despite the years of effort into transforming our polytechnics and ITEs, with many of these graduates entering the industry with ready skills, why have their salaries not kept pace? Is it just a question of perception? And if we want to pay our technicians, nurses, plumbers, car mechanics, as well as their university-educated counterparts, what needs to happen? Can it happen? With me to discuss this are Mark Lee, Head of Client Solutions at Randstad Singapore.
Pleasure to be here.
Christine Kunasekaran, a Sales Operations Analyst at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, who graduated from ITE over 10 years ago.
Hi, glad to be here as well.
Wong Kai Xian, a recent Temasek Poly graduate from the School of Engineering.
Hello, same here. Glad to be here.
All right, guys, great to have you here with me. Mark, I'm going to start off with you. You're in the business of hiring people, helping them determine their salaries. And can you kick things off by explaining how are salaries set in the first place?
Salaries generally follow market expectations that are what employer wants to pay. This depends on the demand for a certain role. I'll give you an example. Tech roles have been very in demand in the last, I would say, 3 to 5 years. In fact, off the charts. Last year, we did a record number of tech placements. So, naturally, salaries are set higher than, let's say, a back office role for a financial institution. That is being automated slowly and offshored in time. If the question is how are salaries set, it really comes to the demand and supply of a certain role. But this is not counting as well what we want to talk about today, the disparity of pay between certain education certifications.
Because when we look at grads and non-grads, there is a large disparity, almost double what the other is earning.
Absolutely right. And when we look at it as recruiters as well, we don't see a reason behind that. Because in the end, what we think, and actually what some economies follow out there, work experience actually counts for more than the education certification. So when you look at it that way, then there shouldn't be the disparity. But unfortunately, in Singapore, we haven't arrived at that place just yet.
Okay, but that's also, you're saying work experience, which means you've been in the workforce for a while. But if you're fresh out of school, comparing a university graduate from an ITE grad, there is a large disparity. I mean, Christine, you graduated from ITE. You've been in the workforce for over a decade, but when you first came out, did you feel, oh man, this is so unfair?
Truth be told, when I started my first job, my salary, it wasn't really good. But the attitude that I have, it being my first job, was that I just went with it, right? And I just accepted that salary and I stayed in the job. I did my best. I put my heart and mind to it. I think that's the right attitude that someone should have.
Would you mind telling us, what was your first job?
I was an assistant to a sales engineer for a precision engineering company.
Okay, and you don't have to answer this if it's sensitive, but what was your pay at that time?
No, I can say it's $1,000.
$1,000.
Even my cost manager at that time, he did tell me, Christine, your salary is too low.
Oh.
Even he told me that. I didn't really think much about the money because I really wanted to get the experience that I needed to complete the bond that I was serving at that time, which was the precision engineering scholarship bond that we were all under.
The salary wasn't, in a way you knew it was low, but you wanted to get that experience in,
correct,
and under your belt.
And I think it's about perspective as well, right? You knowing that you're really new, you need to prove your worth, you need to get your skin in the game. You just go inside and you do what you have to do.
And today, has it flipped? Can you say you're now kind of on par with your colleagues?
Yes, I think I can say that. It also depends on the industry that we're in, right?
Okay. And this is after over a decade of experience that you've had to sort of earn that.
Correct. And prove your worth.
Well, Kai Xian, what about you? You've just finished poly, you're doing university now, and we know the program you took part in, the whole idea was to bridge the gap between what you studied and skills that you need in the industry. But do you feel that it's unfair that you need to take sort of extra steps, like now going to university, to sort of bring yourself so that you'll be on par with grads?
Okay, I disagree with that because I believe is that learning is a non-stop process. It's a never-ending process. So it's always good for me to enroll on my degree program to get on the same level as them.
Okay, so you would have done it anyway?
Yes, correct.
And
within the capability means.
Is that why you decided not to go and start work straight away after finishing your Polytechnic diploma?
For that, I did proceed to work out in the industry straight away. And that's where I come across this work-study program.
Right.
How this program works is whereby I will undergo a 1 to 1.5 years of duration. And it consists of me learning a couple of modules in the Polytechnic as well as in a university. So the process goes whereby I'll be attached to a company. I'll be no different from a full-time staff. I'm concurrently attending night classes virtually, while during the day I'm working for the company.
Okay. But you are having to do these extra things just to bring yourself up to par with what a university grad would not have to do. I mean, he would come in straight away and get the job and not have to continue doing extra classes and things like that. Do you feel that it's unfair that you have to do all these extra things?
I don't think it's unfair because to them, they go through university and they gain the knowledge. But to me, right, I gain the hands-on experience. So when I embark into the industry, I would know what to do and what not to do. So I would think that these are the steps that would bring the company to greater heights.
Right. And you were telling us that for you, this is also a long-term plan because you see that having a degree will help you climb the corporate ladder or the career ladder in a better way.
Yes, correct.
Well, Mark, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, we have two very driven individuals here, and then they're very happy to kind of put in extra effort, lifelong learning, and that's gotten them to where they are today. But at the same time, I think there's two issues here. One is that you can adjust yourself, and like our two friends here, Christina and Kai Xian, have done. They've bettered themselves, they've chosen to, and they are going to enter the system, and they feel that that's the way to go. But at the same time, we should also look at the systemic. Is there any inequality in looking at jobs and the people that are a fit for these jobs? From my experience, what we see, 99% of the roles that we see these days, or maybe not 99, 90%, they put in the requirements that they look at a university degree holder. Now, the question here is, do you really need a degree holder to perform this role? Some cases, yes. If you're looking at very technical roles, like Kai Xian said, you gain a knowledge in school, in university, and you can do the role. However, there are roles out there that are more data entry, for example, admin, and yet they put that a university grad required.
Yeah, for data entry? That doesn't make sense. I mean, but let's talk about some of those jobs because, of course, every parent wants the best for their child, often wants them to be a graduate, but the paper chase can lead to jobs like nursing, mechanic, carpentry, plumbers, these therefore become devalued. But if we think about it, these jobs are very essential to our daily lives. We can't live without them, right? So why isn't the economics of it more obvious? There's demand for these skills, but yet we don't reward them enough.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? These are things that you can't live without. So for example, I'm going to compare two jobs here, right? You're looking at the crypto firms that were hot last year.
Yep.
Can I do without crypto for a week? Of course I can, right? But I can't do without my aircon or my light. And you know what? Those are the hand jobs that you mentioned. These are crucial jobs that are filled and performed by people with skills. So yes, I agree that these jobs shouldn't be devalued at all. We should look at them and then think about how much value we place on them. The instance that you mentioned, $200, is that too much? Maybe not. In that instance, I really needed my door to be open and I'm willing to pay that amount. So I think it is a little bit about the system and what society places value on. And I think there needs to be a shift in thinking as well.
But that shift in thinking and that mindsets that we have, I mean, Christine, did you ever feel that people looked at you differently because you were an ITE grad?
I think at the beginning, people were curious. In my first job, when I say I was from ITE, but yet I had a diploma, they were curious about it. But I never felt that it was a condescending kind of glare or anything like that. I don't think I was looked down upon in that way, but more like out of curiosity.
And Kai Xian, I mean, you said, a lot of people start work after finishing poly. Would you have done that? Did you feel that you also didn't want to do that because, in a way, to sort of just work full time without going back to school again, did you feel that would not allow you to progress as far?
No, what I was thinking back then was I had the time and I didn't want to rush myself to settle down into the industry. So why not take the opportunity to explore and look around to finalize my thinking as to what I'm going to decide to do for my career in the long term.
So if you think about it, I mean, we pay, a doctor, a lawyer, lots of money, but yet a nurse, we don't pay as much. When you think about it, they both do take care of you, and to a certain extent, your life is in their hands at some point in time. So why is there still that disparity? And Mark, you said it's mindsets. I mean, is it partly our Asian culture? Do we look down on these jobs?
Yeah, I do think there's a certain element of that. I'll draw a comparison between having a permanent job and a contract job. Effectively, they're both jobs. But if you came back one day and told your parents you had a contract job, they're going to tell you, please get a real job, right? So I do think there's this societal thinking or stigma about certain jobs and the status that it brings, which shouldn't be the case. Because like you said, a nurse and a doctor both take care of you. They're both effectively healthcare individuals, right? So there shouldn't be a difference between that and the way that you view it. When you consider the amount of skill involved in each job, you have a difference. But in essence, they are still both healthcare individuals.
Yeah, can I just chime in on that? A doctor does have greater leverage than a nurse. And, the decisions they make can affect a person's life as well. Whereas a nurse doesn't really have to make those kind of life-saving decisions, right? So I think the leverage that a doctor has would probably add to the amount of salary he's getting.
He has greater responsibility, that is true. But guess what? So does an electrician. Let me explain. Recently, we did a topic about water heaters and the safety of them, and we found out that it was the way they were installed that made them dangerous. And if you have an unqualified electrician installing it, that could lead to death. So this electrician I was interviewing, he said, Steve, do you realize? Actually, I have a license to kill. And it occurred to me, I'm like, oh yeah. If you think about it that way, because we all use electricity, but yet we don't want to pay the guy to take more time to do it, even though it is really a possible life threat.
Yeah, and there will be certain situations as well. I'm sure some of my engineer friends that are graduates, they couldn't do the job of a qualified electrician. So it's still very different. A university grad doing that role, which you entrust your life with.
But yet we don't want to pay them so much.
Yeah.
So how do we deal with that? So let me share with you. I heard this once. Somebody said, jobs aren't really that different. What do plumbers, garbage men, and economists all have in common? They all deal with gross domestic product. Okay. I mean, if you think about it, at the end of the day, we all have a job. What we do affects lives of the people around us.
Are you looking for ways to make your money work harder for you? Or need tips on saving, investing, and making financial decisions? Join me, Sarah Alcalde, on Money Talks, CNA's top personal finance podcast. From investment basics to the FIRE movement and legacy planning, I look at financial trends and news stories that matter to you. Check out our complete playlist on the CNA app, Apple and Google Podcasts, or Spotify. You can also follow us or subscribe for new weekly episodes.
So let's talk now about how we can try and narrow this gap. Because Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong also alluded to a few more issues. First, he says if your ITE grads are not paid well, they end up leaving the industry and therefore you're left with a shortfall. We already have a manpower crunch. It could be worse. Think of all the MRT trains that may not work for a start. Does this mean then we'll have to rely on more migrant labour, which is something we don't want to do? So how do you think we can go about fixing this, Mark?
Well, the first thing I think is at the employers. The employers need to start to change the way they view jobs and the salaries that they pay. They need to look at the roles that they have. It's almost like looking at individual roles and deciding whether or not these roles should get paid more than others. In some cases, maybe a wage equality revision is required. And you know what? There's a lot of that going around now in the various industries. They're looking at it and they're going, you know what? Attrition is up to about 30 to 40%. That's pretty unacceptable because basically you're losing 1 in every 3. And they're looking at, okay, what do we have to do as a retention strategy? We need to increase wages. A lot of attrition is caused by salary issues. People feeling that they're not getting paid what they're worth. They skip out, they change jobs. And given the gig industry now, it's very easy to transit into something for a while before moving on to another job. When you look at it, wage increments are crucial. And the first entity to look at it will be the employers.
Yeah. So, Christine, now that you've come a bit further and you're in a position where you can help your boss look out for other people, do you feel that you would hire someone differently? Would you look at them differently? Would you credit where you are today to opportunities that you had?
To answer the first question about how would I look at people differently if I have the opportunity to watch
If you were
out-
the employer
Yeah, okay.
hiring someone.
Recently, we were interviewing some candidates, right, for our team. And it really wasn't about the credentials the person had, even though, I saw the CV. So it's more like peer interview sort of setup, right? So that gave me the opportunity to actually interview the person. So I was looking at the CV, and again, it wasn't the background of the person, meaning the school that he came from, the qualification he had, but rather it was the experience that he had, whether or not he was placed in similar situations with what we're facing in his previous roles, right? If the industry he was in was different, is it replicable in our industry? Can he carry those skills forward? Can it be applied in the same way?
Right. So you were looking beyond just the paper qualifications.
Exactly.
Do you feel that that's partly because of your background?
No, I don't think it was 100%, maybe 50%. We do have some biasness when we look at certain situations, right? Maybe 50% because of my background, but I think it's probably the training that I had along the way.
Where you are today also, was that because there were certain opportunities that were given to you?
Exactly, yeah. There were good opportunities, there were good mentors along the way that I met. There were people that were willing to coach me, to basically speak with me, give me that consult that I needed, the expert advice on how I should go forward in life.
Okay.
Right? Some are people that I speak with directly, personally, but there are some people that I also listen to on podcasts, right? I do read some of their books, and I think it kind of shifted my mindset a little.
But you needed to have that first person offer the opportunity and say, I think you can do it, I'm going to give you the opportunity to try, right? Because
you definitely need that.
very often, I think, like Mark was saying, employers have a different mindset.
I think now, if you ask me, still there's a majority of employers that come to us and here's a job description. Can you find me someone that basically reads like my job description? What we do need more is what Christina had, mentors and leaders that are willing to take a chance based on a person's character, based on a person's drive and energy. Maybe they've spoken to them in the interview and then feel that. So I know a couple of entrepreneur friends and they pick up people into their companies based on an interview where the person doesn't have any prior experience, regardless of education cert or not, based on that drive of the person and passion for the industry or role. They pick him up, and you know what? It's been successful. I myself have a team member has been top performing, and you know what? He's not a graduate, but in a sales role, sometimes you don't need a graduate to do a sales role.
But it sounds like you need a certain type of employer, and it sounds like it requires more effort on their part, which they may not be willing to do.
Yeah, it requires taking a chance. It might not work out. I do think it's this fear of failure. In our society as well, sometimes you're not allowed to fail. So therefore, don't take a chance, don't take a risk on bringing this person in. Just do what works. Basically, get someone that reads like your job description.
Okay. Well, Kai Xian, how do you feel about where you are in life now in this stage? Do you feel like there is that risk that if I mess up, then I'm going to lose some opportunities?
Okay, personally for me, if I were to fail, it's all right for me to fail because I get the experience. But if I don't try it all right, I never know what will work out for me. Or let's say if the best case scenario, if it works out for me, then all the more it's better for me because I get to move on to somewhere that can provide me with more benefits.
But do you feel more pressure as a Polytechnic graduate? Do you feel that compared to some of your colleagues, there is more pressure on you to perform, to do better, in a way to show that you can be just as good as them?
Pressure, I would say that is a very essential trait that should be in our daily life because it gives us the drive to perform better. Because without pressure, I'll just do my tasks without any effort. There isn't any aim for me to work towards to. That's why I think I would rather have the pressure than to feel nothing at all.
Okay. Do you like working under pressure too?
Yeah, I do.
Really? Okay.
Now we're on the topic of education, right? ITE wasn't the last place that I stopped learning. We still continued. I still went on. Of course, I got my degree and all.
Right.
I'm still studying right now. I got class data.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think the onus falls both on the employer and the individual as well, because this lifelong learning thing is very important.
But at the same time, if someone wants to be a plumber for life, why do we not embrace that. We know it's a skilled occupation. In other parts of the world, they have unions, they're paid a very decent salary. Why can't we do that here?
By all means, we should. If you think about the generation that came before us, because of the place that our nation was at, you need to be a doctor, you need to be an accountant or something along those lines. Then you've proven yourself. And yet, there is no recognition of handwork. This is hard work, this is skill work. So yeah, by all means, we should be recognizing that. And obviously the individual, on the other hand, be the best plumber that you can be, not a substandard one that doesn't work, But yeah, so I do think there's a meeting of minds there. Can we change it in a day? Probably not. But I do think that it's getting to a better place because as we go along, even from my generation to the younger ones, I do think there's acceptance, there's a recognition of the amount of hard work that gets put into these roles.
It's not as easy as it looks because I've tried fixing lights at home on my own, tripped the circuit a few times, got a big scolding from my wife, and then I realized that maybe it's just better to hire someone who can do it properly, So it does sound like we've got a big mountain to climb. And, DPM Wong said it's a fundamental shift. We're asking employers to look at hiring, promotion, training in a different light and to value these occupations. Maybe for Christine and Kai Xian, do you ever feel that perhaps your school could have done more to position you guys better so that when you finish school, you would be better placed to enter the workforce?
Actually, my school did a lot for us already. ITE did a lot. They did so much. There's so much publicity on the courses. There's so much funding from the Precision Engineering Institute. For the course that I was in, there were also collaborative partners from Germany who actually taught the course. The cert that was given to us was also endorsed by Germany from a particular state, right? So I think the school did a lot, and actually I'm really thankful to them. So I think they did their level best.
What about you, Kai Xian?
Now during school times, there's these two phases called in-class and in-lab sessions. So in class is mainly just the professors giving us lectures on the theoretical stuff. When it comes to lab, right, we get to apply those stuff that we learn, or maybe we are made to apply it practically. So I feel that it's better for us to have more lab sessions so that we can understand in a way better. To me, I feel that theoretical lessons are just pure hard memorizing, and we tend to forget it very easily. Okay. But when it comes to me using my hands, it tends to form like muscle memory.
Right.
So I'll just remember it for long.
Okay.
So once I have the foundation or maybe the experience, I will remember long enough to apply it in my career.
Okay, so more hands-on experience.
Yeah, correct.
But yet at the same time, the fact that you're going to get a university degree is a shift because in a university obviously is less hands-on. So you're actually going to a different level where you're hoping to perhaps manage someone who will then do the hands-on work. Do you feel that everyone wants to do that, become the manager, but nobody really wants to be the worker on the ground?
There will always be someone to fulfill the technical role.
Then just add to that, it's not for everybody, being a manager, because you don't want to be a manager, you probably want to be a leader. Christina had some good leaders. She didn't just a manager that said, do this every day. We've seen in our experience as well in the company, there are some individuals that are more cut out to be the best producer of results, the best worker ever. But they will never want to, and they have raised up their hands and recognized that they don't want to be managers. So, like Kai Xian said, there will be someone for each role. It's our responsibility, or the employee's responsibility as well, to identify who is right for which role. And from there, you can probably achieve better equality.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap things up. Just any last words from each of you. Christine, you can go first perhaps. Would you change anything if you could hit down this path of life again?
Honestly, no, because I got here and there's more to life than just degrees. There's more to life than just studying. We've got so much of life to live, right? We've got family, we've got relationships to build, and success can come in many ways. I'm happy where I'm at.
Great. Kai Xian, you are still halfway through your journey. What is the ultimate goal?
I would say that even after I've completed this work-study program, I would still choose to embark on another work-study program, because what they provide me is that they drive down to the specialized modules for me to learn, to contribute to the organization which I'm working for. So for me to learn those modules, right, it only requires me a certain amount of time, and not like those 2-3 years type of degree modules. So I would say it's very beneficial to me.
You sound like a lifelong learning kind of guy.
Yes, correct.
Good, the government likes to hear that. Mark, how can we approach this?
Maybe looking back on my own experience, I think the one thing I picked up in my own career is never stop trying to discover what you're passionate about. You never know when, but when you do, work in that space. Because like I said, I started in finance before moving into this role, and I'm a lot happier in this role. Now, if someone can find something along those lines, obviously the realist in me says do something that helps you survive on a day-to-day basis. But when you do, you find that passion, please go after that role. Rather than chasing the papers, chasing the certification. Hey, if that's your passion, go ahead, but do something that you're passionate about. At least that's what I've learned in the course of my career.
But I think the challenge here is for the rest of us to look at those jobs differently too. Because if your child comes to you or my kid comes to me and says, I want to be, a car mechanic, I'd be like, really? But if he tells me I want to be a car mechanic and eventually own a bunch of companies that fix cars, then it's a slightly different approach, right?
So I told my dad I wanted to be a garbage collector when I was young.
Oh, really?
I thought it was cool to stand at the back of one of those trucks. So he never fails to tell that story.
Yeah, but we have to accept that, sure, lawyers, doctors, bankers, they'll always be pretty much up there on the pay scale. But I think when it comes to the other jobs like plumbers, technicians, nurses, childcare teachers, they shouldn't be that far off in terms of the pay scale either. It starts from also the rest of us looking at those jobs differently and showing respect and appreciation for people in those jobs and not just think, you're no good and you can't do any better. Well, thank you so much for coming in, guys. It's been great chatting with you. If you have views to share or even suggestions on what you'd like to hear on the show, do drop us a note at cnapodcast@mediacorp.com.sg. The team behind this podcast is Joanne Chan, Jacqueline Chan, Sai Win, and Crispina Robert. And I'm Stephen Chia. I'll see you next week.